Hello, this is Vincent, and welcome to Dogma Discussions. So, this channel is here to discuss dogma, primarily religious dogma, but any dogma is fair game. And what I do is I tell stories based on my own life experiences. I grew up evangelical, and I noticed at a young age there were a lot of problems with it. Yet it took me a while to break away from the religious dogma. And so that's what the stories I tell are about, how dangerous dogma can be and how it's used to manipulate people. So if this sounds like your kind of channel, then listen up. And I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, and the notification bell so you'll know when I put out new videos, and share the video with someone you think might enjoy and or benefit from it. The story I'm going to share with you today I call the dogma of enmity or hatred towards the earth. Okay, ready? Here we go. In Genesis, when God curses the serpent, the Creator says that he is placing hostility between the snake and the woman, and between the reptile's offspring and hers. That humans will crush the snake's head, and it will strike at their heels. Reviewing this passage recently, I have this one observation. It's not really about snakes, is it? During my childhood in the evangelical church, this passage was used as a metaphor. The snake representing the world and the human's godliness. So, how are Christians supposed to live in a world in which they are born, which is characterized as dangerous and something to which they are to avoid attachment? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That the dogma encourages us to detach from our environment, from our identity with our bodies and the desires of the flesh. This attempt to insulate ourselves from the world often results in suffering for the believer. We see this in the ways people try to accomplish this disengagement. Some actually self-isolate. Others pick and choose a certain worldly vice to avoid. And others actually physically punish themselves for just being human. The older I grow, the more the brevity of life becomes apparent. For so much of our youth, our days are spent struggling to establish careers or family or both. We attempt to carve out our own identity away from parents and siblings. Yet often, being pulled back in, we must fight to make our way all over again. And the years pass by. For many, that's why middle age is so traumatic. These days, divorce rates are very high in this group and older, because it's the first opportunity since youth to reflect on one's life and try to find oneself. So, as much of a struggle as life is in general, why adhere to a dogma that makes it even more difficult? Well, for many, it's not a choice. It's programmed into us from the earliest age. Consider the following. In the book of James, the author advises that anyone who is a friend to the world is an enemy to God, because friendship with the world is hostility against God. As a result of this dogma, churches rail against the delights of the flesh as corrupting, ungodly, and just plain unseemly. I've known many people, both men and women, who have suffered from sexual dysfunction in particular because of the guilt from this dogma. Thus, it should not be surprising that some take this discomfort with the world as a sign to separate themselves from it. I had a girlfriend once named Angela, whose aunt was a nun. Some Saturday evenings, Angela would hang out at the convent and watch TV with the sisters. Seemed like an odd hobby, but Angela enjoyed it. And what did they watch? The Love Boat, of all things. Yet, wasn't the theme of that show sex? Are convents in general as much fun as Angela claimed? Perhaps she didn't see the entire picture. In college, I worked at the campus library. On one occasion, it's winter break. No students are around, and there is cart after cart of books to reshelve. My compatriot in this task is Terry. In her 30s, she is generally quiet and keeps to herself. Physically, she is tall and thin, with short-cropped black hair. Usually, like this evening, she wears ill-fitting trousers and a very baggy shirt. We are on the second floor, and without students, the room seems cavernous and dismal. The fluorescent lighting highlights the drabness of the gray shelves and carpeting. Boredom takes hold, and at one point we begin chatting. Let me take you to that moment. We are working on opposite sides of the same shelf, and generalities out of the way, I ask, "So, Terry, what brought you to study philosophy?" "Oh, Vincent, it's been a lifelong interest. I guess it's what drew me into the convent." "Convent? Oh, wow." I react in this way because I didn't know this information before. "There's an interesting story in there somewhere," I add and laugh. But she doesn't and answers, "No, not really." "Well, may I ask why you left?" "Oh, I lost my faith." "Really? Why?" "Well, honestly, Vincent, I didn't understand why we would hate the bodies that God made for us. I mean, we nuns were totally desexualized and de-individualized. It was honestly a depressing way to live. I'm trying to escape it mentally, but I'm not sure how." I restrain myself from suggesting that she embrace her femininity and resexualize herself. So I ask, "How were you different before?" And she responds, "I had long hair and wore dresses all the time." Stunned silent because of her current appearance, I say nothing. She peers at me through the gaps between the books and says, "You know, Vincent, I've considered returning to my old self, but how do I feel feminine again when I don't even feel human anymore?" Don't even feel human anymore. Those words disturb my mind. How could one lose herself so completely? The answer is simple, because she swallowed the dogma, internalized it, and actually became it. How horrible to lose your sense of belonging to your own species and gender. Only humans are so susceptible to that kind of nonsensical indoctrination. Yet, what about people who don't go to such extremes, but still try to rein in their bodily enjoyment. The Apostle Peter says to be sober and vigilant because the devil stalks around like a lion, looking for someone to devour. And since the devil tempts us with pleasures of the flesh, we must avoid things that delight it, right? In the church of my birth, that would be alcohol, because Paul tells the Ephesians not to get drunk. I never received a clear answer about why drinking without inebriation was verboten, but any drinking was out. So, what did the good Baptist enjoy? Ice cream, in the form of church socials. Lots and lots of it. Because God might care about corrupting your liver, but clogging your arteries or achieving diabetes and unhealthy weight gain? Nah, it's all good. Is the illogic really that apparent? Or is it just me? If any of our flock were bold enough to indulge in spirits, they were deridedly referred to as beer-drinking Baptists and treated to passive-aggressive reprisals in the way Jesus would have done it. But for some people, merely separating oneself or denying pleasure isn't enough. There must be real suffering. In the book of Romans, Paul warns us that the mind is ruled by the flesh and is hateful towards God because it's unwilling and unable to submit to Him. So, how do you submit the body? Oh, there are lots of unpleasant ways. Catholic flagellants, having emerged in the 13th century and still surviving in small sects today, regularly will lacerate the body to subdue their physical desires. But fleshly punishment isn't just for Catholics anymore. What about Arthur Blessed, a minister from my youth, known for dragging a cross around different parts of the world? Since Jesus carrying the cross was a type of punishment that was inflicted upon him, it seems to me that Blessed's actions connote an idea of suffering in the way of his Lord. And what about the Filipino man who annually has had himself nailed to a cross for over 30 years as a reenactment of the crucifixion? I guess it could be an act of worship, but like these other examples, seems to me related to the hatred towards the flesh. Otherwise, why punish your body so? We often hear the biblical quote, "Be in the world, but not of it." Problem? This is actually a misquote from the good book itself. 1 John lays out the idea more literally. Do not love the world or anything in it, for if you love the world, there is no love for God within you. Ah, there's the hostility. Yet, if we're created from the earth, like our forefather Adam, can we successfully live separately from it? We have biological urges like other mammals to eat, drink, sleep, survive, have sex. So, how do we decide which parts of these urges are good and which hateful to God? Can we enjoy sex as long as it's in marriage? Or, as some claim, must it only be for procreation? Or, as some claim, can it only be in certain positions or only copulatory, not oral? And alcohol, bad. Even though research seems to indicate a glass of wine a day may be good. Ice cream, not good for us physically, especially in the amounts we Americans tend to consume, but okay with God. It's like Christopher Hitchens said about the issue of limiting free speech. Who gets to decide what's limited? It's similar with religious hostility against the world. What authority do you trust to interpret what the dogma means? And what are you willing to suffer for that interpretation? Alrighty, thank you for listening. That's the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this video with as many people as you want to. Take care until next time. This is Vincent. Goodbye.